Today's Scots are descendants from Greek Kalithones. The elements on which we base our views are these. 1. The behavior of some Scottish soldiers towards the Cypriot fighters during the liberation struggle 1955 to 59. 2. Caledonia of Scotland today, from the Greeks of Kalithones. 3. The reference of Tacitus in the book Agricola and Solinus C. Euleus about Caledonia. 4. The Greek names of tribes, cities, and geographical elements that are on the geographical map of Claudius Ptolemy, prepared 2nd century AD. 5. The position of Caledonians Scots, that they differ from the English and their struggles to create a separate state. The report from Cyprus, Loisu Zacharia from Polemi. At the beginning of the liberation struggle, I met a Scotsman, George Gorton, a sergeant in the British Army. We became friends. It was really lavender. He would come and sit in the village cafe. I made him coffee, offered him a cigarette, and even though I did not know much English, he then got engaged to a cousin of mine, and he also came and we had fun together. The late George realized that I was from Eureka, but he never asked me about it. In a way, he gave me information about the movements of the English. 2 or 3 hours before the investigation began, he gave me the information. I immediately sent the message to the fighters left there, and he also informed me that the British Army knew that the head of the department lived in a certain area, in a certain city there. I immediately sent the message, and the fighters took action. So he was helping the Cypriots for their independence. 2. Caledonia, Scotland. Scotland is the northern part of Britain. The Cheviot Mountains separate England from Scotland. The capital of Scotland is Edinburgh. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Scotland consists of 800 islands. Most are inhabited. The Scots, the new name of Caledonians. It's questionable whether the name Scots in Scotland was found. All we found is what Sean Duffy's book, History of Ireland, page 40 says. The Romans called Ireland Scotia and the Scotians. The area of Caledonia got the name Scotland from this. Why now we write Scotland with O and let the experts tell us. Now, Scotland is a country in Europe and part of Great Britain, to which it belongs politically. The population is about 5 million. The northmost part of Scotland is mountainous and sparsely populated. No foreign power from ancient times influenced them. That's why its inhabitants preserve their language, clothing, dances, and their ancient customs and traditions. Their language today is Gaelic. They still speak Scottish and English. The name Caledonia is probably related to Caledonia, a city in Aetolia in central Greece. Her king was Oeneus. It's known that its inhabitants did not offer the beginnings, their first offerings, and their first fruits to the goddess Artemis. And that is why Artemis sent them the Caledonian boar, a wild and bodily wild boar, which killed the farmers, destroying their crops, and the boar was killed by Meleagros. Then they offered Artemis their first fruits, but built a temple for her and made her their patron saint. Caledonia is also mentioned by Aristotle in his poetry 1158 of the country of Pelops. Also, references of Tacitus to Agricola about the Kalithones, meaning the Scots. The Romans were invaders in Caledonia. Their purpose was to conquer it and exploit it. The Romans were invaders in Caledonia to explore it and to exploit it, and their first impression, as Tacitus told Agricola, is that it is a dangerous country for any invader. First, the invaders had to fight to save their lives and then think about victory. The force of the Kalithones is the infantry. Sometimes they use it in wars and chariots like the heroes of the Trojan War. In the book of Tacitus Agricola, written in 97 to 98 AD, it mentions the history of the Roman war effort to conquer Britain and Caledonia, that is Britain and Scotland. The operations began 55 BC with Julius Caesar, and they continued until 77 AD, so all of England was occupied. Caledonia, however, remained free. In 77 AD, Agricola took over as governor of occupied Britain. From 77 to 82 AD, he did 7 big campaigns. He defeated the British and reached the hilly region of Caledonia, Crampiana. Impressed by the intimidating movements of the Caledonians and fearing the revolt of the northern cities, he used his fleet for the first time to demonstrate strength and to monitor the ports. The Caledonians attacked one of the Roman camps without provocation and caused great damage. The Romans counterattacked and wanted to go deeper into Caledonia and continue fighting until they reached its edge, but they did not. They could not. The speech of the leader Calgac to the Caledonians. The Caledonians were fearless of the losses in the previous battles and gladly wanted revenge rather than enslavement. They had to face the common enemy together. All the states united, all the tribes, the clans of Scotland united and formed an army of 30,000 men. The Roman military force was 4 legions, that is more than 40,000 men. In addition, they had 3,000 cavalry and 8,000 reserve troops. One of the leaders of the Caledonians, Calgacus, addressed the soldiers who were thirsty for war with these words, quote, "Goodbye, the enthusiasm and determination with which you are dealing with this crisis that has befallen us makes us hope that the moment of freedom for all of Britain is approaching. We, Britain's finest flower, are precious in these places. Invisible from the enemy located on the conquered shores, we have our eyes proud because we are free from the tyrannical presence. Behind us are rocks and waves, and in the sea the robbers of the world, the Romans. Wealth and the thirst of power for power ignite their greed and rob, slaughter, and plunder. They kidnap our men and send them as slaves to other places. Our women and sisters are being raped, deceived by the enemy. They seize our lives and force us to open roads in swamps and forests. Do not expect sorrow from the invaders if you love your honor and life. You look worthy of the times. In front of us is the army of the Romans. If they defeat us, it means for us a tortured and humiliated life, that of a slave. Go forward and to the battle in the front high, guided by the sacrifice of those who were lost, with the hope of a better life for those who will come," end quote. So this is, Agricola used all his forces during the ensuing conflict in the Crabiana Mountains. He defeated the Kalithones but did not advance to the north of the country. He built many forts to protect himself from the Kalithones. Adrian built a wall from the east coast to the west, and this to repel the attacks of the disobedient Caledonians. So that's why Adrian's wall was built. They wanted to keep the Scots out from, what would we call it? We would call it a war of resistance, right? Now, in the 5th century AD, the Roman legions left Britain, and we have 2 facts about which language they spoke. The first is what is mentioned in the memoirs of Julius Caesar, that the inhabitants of Albion, which was the old name of Britain, Albion, had slight differences in language. That is, they spoke about the same language all over Britain. He also tells us that his legionnaires communicated with the Gauls in the Greek Homeric language which they spoke and wrote. So they spoke Greek throughout the area. Gauls is, as we know, France. The second element is the one mentioned by the Roman writer Solinus Aelius, 250 AD, in his book Collectana Rerum Memorabilium, He writes that Homeric Odysseus reached as far as Caledonia. The Ulysses reached as far as Scotland. Okay? The Ulysses of Homer reached as far as Scotland. This is proved by the engravings written on a slab of an altar with Greek letters. Those who wrote must have known Greek, and those who would read them again must have known Greek. Therefore, it can be said that their language is related to Greek. The Greek language was spoken long before the 2nd century BC millennium and was at the high level of perfection. So she is the queen of the languages. She was used at that time, the language of the gods. Cicero said, if gods are chosen, the language of the Greeks is painted. We said that in Albion and Caledonia, the Greek dodecatheon was worshipped, the 12 gods of Mount Olympus. The Caledonians would be proud to speak the language of their gods, which was Greek. The religion of the Caledonians. Tacitus tells us that they performed the same rituals all over Britain. The Druids, okay, remember the Druids, okay, and the oak trees, and eating of the oak, the eating of the oak kernels. We can therefore assume that they had the same faith and the same religious traditions. Yes, the Druids, meaning Dries, meaning oak tree, and they were the pagan Druids of the British Isles, obviously coming from the ancient Greek pagan rituals. Now, in the book, The Ancient Greeks in Britain, it was proved that the British believed in the ancient Greek gods, the pantheon of the 12 gods. So if we take into account that the megalithic monuments of Caledonia that were religious sites, such as of Callanish in the Urid Islands, of Casterig in the Crabean Mountains, of Stennis in the Orcades Islands, of Maes Hau in the Orcades Islands, Orcade Islands, of the Ring of Brogar in the Orcade Islands, of Pictish stone throughout Caledonia, and others were similar to those of England and Ireland, then we can accept that the inhabitants of the British Isles had the same religion. Yeah, because they were Druids. Now, because in England we claimed that in our previous research they believed in the Greek 12 pantheon of the ancient Olympian gods, and especially in the god Apollo, the same can be said for the inhabitants of Caledonia, Scotland. The dress of the Caledonians and the Scottish skirt, the kilt, a similar costume was that of the Mycenaean hoplites, the soldiers of the ancient area of Sparta, Argos. Gaia, the musical instrument of the Scots, that is the bagpipes, is identical to the asklavos of our ancestors, and their dance is similar to the Pyrrhic dance of the ancient Greeks. Then you have the Greek names. The presence of the ancient Greeks in Caledonia, Scotland, is certainly by the many Greek names of tribes, cities, geographical elements. These names are found in the geographical map of Northern Europe of Claudius Ptolemy, 108 to 168 AD, a geographer from Alexandria in Egypt. And these names are also mentioned in the geographical maps made by the Romans in the 1st century AD. And these names are about 80. Of these, we'll mention the most characteristic. Orkney Islands, Orki, genus Catesians, Epidion Akron, observatory, Ilha, Ilion, Bank City, Bank High City, Impeller Camp City, Tina Estuary, Tos, Lemanonios Bay, Ina Eschisis, Child, Funds, Lindos, which is our town in Rhodes, Lindos, Alavna, Corda, Carvantorigion, North Wind, Curia, Barber, Sacred Place, Kuros, meaning a young youth, Kurion, the city of Kurion Apollo, Lugo, meaning light, Smerte, Smerdis, fish species, Aki, meaning early, Kerini, weather, Keros means weather, Kirinia, city of Cyprus, Decanti, officers or deity signs. Kornonakai, meaning horn. Karni, meaning sheep. Nakos, meaning leather sheep. Kalidonios, Kalidon, water site. Kreon, meaning king. Dhamnoni, epidhamnos, nuante, meaning new. Picton, pignimi, thick. Picton, meaning thick, like a thick sauce. Pictis idios, musical organ. And 5, the relations of the Caledonians with the English. In the old days, before the Romans tried to conquer Britain, its inhabitants had the same religion and the same language. It's mentioned by Tacitus. It's also mentioned that in his speech, the leader of the Chaldaeans, Calgacus, telling them that this battle between us and the Romans can bring the liberation of the whole of Britain, there must therefore be kinship and friendship between the peoples of Britain, and they must feel that they belong to the same race. When the Romans left Britain in the 5th century, there must have been a difference between those living in the north of Hadrian's Wall and those living south of it. The northerners, the Caledones, were the free, the ruthless to the Romans. The southerners were the slaves of the Romans. They were enslaved and would not be as proud as the northerners. But the southerners were much more. They had better and more land to cultivate and could easily develop livestock. And the people who have developed agriculture and animal husbandry can easily develop trade, industry, science, and generally become an advanced people. The northerners, on the other hand, did not have these facilities. Their life is more difficult in their rugged and inaccessible areas. When their population exceeded 4 million, they were forced to leave their place and find another place to live. And this happened to the Pictors of Caledonia, who most went to Ireland to find a better life. In the 6th century AD, those of the Picts who remained and all the Caledones converted to Christianity. Thus the co-religion between the north and south continued. In the 8th century AD, the Scandinavians invaded Britain and created the British state, which included the south and the Caledonians. The Caledonians did not accept it and started a war against the south, the English, for their independence. In 1314 AD, the northerners defended the southerners and were recognized as independent. In 1707 AD, united their two kingdoms, creating the Kingdom of Great Britain. The North will not have their own parliament, but will participate in the British Parliament, which consists of 360 ministers of parliament with 71 Scottish ministers. Another 16 Scottish delegates are taking part in the House of Lords, which has been about 1,000 delegates. And despite this, there were many reactions from the North to the union of the two kingdoms. There were two dynamic uprisings in 1715 and 1746 with many losses on both sides. These reactions continue to this day. In 1968, the Scottish National Party won a majority in the local government elections, and the effort to create a separate state of Scotland to be represented in the UN continues. So this is from a periodical from the Holy Metropolis of Kikos and Tiliria of Cyprus, dated May 5th, August 2000, May 5th to the issue of May 5th to August, issue 5 of May to August 2008. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. I hope you found it interesting. The names, the language of ancient Greek, the locations, location names, and also the fact that historians refer to the fact that they had the similar 12 god pantheon of the ancient Olympic gods, things like that. The Druid religion, which Thrace, meaning coming from Greece, Thrace means oak in Greece. They were under the oaks and doing their convocations and stuff like that. So please leave your comments and thank you for your support. This is just more proof that the Scots, of course, were Greeks. Thank you for your support.